Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, radiocallisti.org. Remember to catch our exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or a question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Wow, that was random. Exceptional radio.
Hey, it's the 24th of May, and I woke up to an incredible analogy that I really want to share. It's the poo in the pool analogy. And it goes a little something like this. Where did I put it? Okay, there's a lot of chatter. This is from Jeremy Test Trace Isolate. Jeremy Condike on Twitter. He says, all right, there's a lot of chatter on this website bashing those who are saying most of this country still isn't ready for safe opening. So as we approach what would normally be a summer pool session, here's a short analogy about pooping and accountability. Imagine you're at the pool and a kid poops in the water. It happens a few times every summer. So what happens next? Everyone clears the pool. That's the initial step to protect people from the poop, but that's not the end of the story. There's a next step. Some poor soul on staff has to go in and fish out the poop, and it's a pretty thankless job. And then they have to shock the pool with chlorine to kill off bacteria. And then everyone waits an hour and a half or so for it to be safe to swim again. And you can see where this is going. If the lifeguards tell everyone to clear the pool, but the pool staff declines to actually get rid of the poop, what happens? No one can go back in. The poop is still there. Essentially, it's limbo. And so whose fault is that if it's not safe to go back in the pool water? Is it who is accountable? And so he asks, do we focus on the people saying clean up the poop before we can get back in safely? Or do we focus on the staff whose job it is to clean up the poop? And what you would think is if the staff are saying, look, just get back in, be a warrior, the answer is pretty obvious. And so now the country is basically a big swimming pool with a poop problem. And the president, rather than fix the mess, is urging everyone back into the pool regardless and saying the real problem is the people who think the pool is not safe yet. And they must hate the pool, etc. And a lot of the public is buying it. The president's whole play here is to distract from the failure to fix the mess by focusing on the country's attention to people who don't want to swim in a pooped-in pool. And it goes on. He wants you to believe that they're saying you should never. He wants you to believe that the people who say it needs to be fixed, say you should never go back in. But that's not the case. And so he says, if you buy that, he's off the hook. He doesn't have to clean up the poop. He doesn't get blamed for failing to do so, and so it's a win-win for him. But no one's saying never get back in the pool. They're just saying clean out the poop, because we all really do want to get back in the pool. Everyone wants to reopen the country. And he says, if you're frustrated that we can't, please hold the right folks accountable. The problem isn't the people saying we need to reopen safely. It's the people saying that we don't need to bother with that part.
Right. I don't disagree with not one word that was said, because part of it is the notion that people on the left don't want the country to open back up because they hate America or some stupid shit like that, which is obviously not correct. But this is where the only way to explain anything to Americans is to frame it in the concept of poop, or in reference to poop. And it's like, we've gotten to the point where the lowest common denominator is so stupid, and the only way to explain, I don't even know if those Americans will get it. The proper Americans that don't understand why we need to keep the economy closed, I don't know if that demographic can actually understand that metaphor. It might go over their heads.
I think that we're also describing a group of people that have no problem going and swimming in a lake that's also used for, drinking supply and motorboating and fishing and all sorts of that sits right next to some kind of urbanization project where all sorts of horrible chemicals and runoff are going to end up in that lake and cause green slime mold, which kills dogs. So Yeah.
It's the same group of people who went to buffets and didn't question how the meat was so cheap. You know, and I think that's kind of where the American lifestyle had so much to do with not asking questions about where shit came from, because whether it's like cheap electronics or cheap meat or cheap milk or cheap eggs, when people don't question where those things come from, that's how you end up getting people who are able to buy a 5 for $5 from Wendy's and not think about, oh, there's a reason the shit used to be super cheap, and now that they went to non-frozen meat, they can't even serve beef like the rest of the country because their practices have changed so drastically that they can't serve meat ethically under their new guidelines. They can't serve beef ethically, so they don't right now. Or I don't know if they went back to it, but they had established such a high standard of ethics in their organization that when COVID hit, they took burgers off the fucking menu of a burger place because they couldn't meet their ethics standards. Whereas other companies are like, yeah, we'll serve you a double cheeseburger for 99 cents still, as if nothing's changed.
You know, I think Wendy's has been playing a really interesting version of social hardball for the last several years. You know, the Wendy Twitter account, shit's ruthless.
It is.
And their decision to drop beef off of some of their menus is just like, you know, granted it was timing, but if Wendy's can survive just selling chicken sandwiches, and hopefully they're going to move to the Impossible Chicken or the Beyond Chicken, whichever one that KFC is using. If they can transition to something like that seamlessly without people noticing or complaining, or, well, I'm sure there's always going to be people who complain because.
I'm sure people complain.
But if anyone hasn't tried, like Beyond Meat or Impossible Meats, you really got to give this stuff a shot because it really is incredible.
I want to try the chicken. I still haven't tried the chicken yet.
The KFC, specially engineered KFC Impossible or Beyond Chicken or whatever it is, like everything I read about it said, this is just like the real thing, and people can't tell the difference.
I wouldn't be surprised, man. Every time I've had Impossible cooked correctly, you really can't tell. Sometimes people will fuck it up because they, you know, if you go to the Burger King at the wrong time, they're gonna fuck up your regular Whopper, and it's gonna be called, whether it's Impossible meat or regular beef. So that's like one of the reasons people like us argue for robots in a lot of places, because that robot is always gonna get the same temperature. If the recipe's correct, this shit's always gonna be perfect. So I don't have to worry about if this dude's got had a bad day or not to know if my Impossible burger's gonna taste like shit. But remember, I don't know if you remember the tomato shortage. Wendy's was one of the first restaurants to stop serving tomatoes automatically, and people lost their shit then. It's like, a lot of people are just gonna take that tomato off. I know I'm one of those people, so when they stop serving tomato automatically, I'm like, yes, thank you. I don't want tomato on my shit automatically. I shouldn't have, when I like my shit plain, I shouldn't have to ask for people to remove stuff to get to a plain burger as the default. That's like the most wasteful approach to shit, where I'm like, I don't want ketchup, I don't want mustard, I don't want tomato, I just want a plain burger. I want a plain burger, and sometimes I want cheese. I don't always even want cheese, because sometimes I want just lean meat and bread. So like that, to get to that option is so difficult that they often fuck it up, because the default is like all this extra shit.
You know, people don't freak out that burger or sandwiches from Arby's don't automatically come with a slice of tomato. Arby's gets away with giving you like shaved meat injected with who knows what so that it fills out. And then they slather on that, you know, that plastic stuff that they call cheese is disgusting. I mean, it's completely disgusting. And if you ever, when you get, next time anyone's out there and go gets an Arby's sandwich, if you get the cheese, squeeze a little bit of out and then onto something, and then take that home and let it sit out for about 3 or 4 hours. Actually, no, let it sit out overnight. smear it on one of your plates, and then let it sit out overnight. And then the next day, you're gonna be scrubbing that fucking thing. Like, you will be so mad. I mean, what the fuck is this? And that stuff lines your gut.
Mm-hmm. And
I mean,
arteries. Eventually.
Oh man, like I can only imagine like that stuff like sticks to a part of the inside of somebody's stomach and just stays there. And we wonder why. And people wonder why they get ulcers.
Right. Well, I was gonna say the people who are complaining about not wearing face masks line their guts in arteries with this bullshit, and then are trying to, you know, I guess we're trying to figure out why we have a hard time getting them to care about other people, let alone themselves, because they don't give a fuck about themselves. They're already destroying themselves day by day with a terrible diet, a terrible approach to exercise, and not being active. Of course, they're not going to wear face masks because they've already given up on life. And we're trying to act like we're dealing with rational people who then try to pretend what they're doing is somehow patriotic, as if they're just not zombies.
Well,
hypnotized by capitalist cult.
I'm sure that you've seen the meme floating around where it's like the same people who refuse to wear face masks are the same people who are also carrying guns for public safety.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And I realize that it's not that cut and dry. I know people who, you know, I have friends in Texas, and they're being smart, and they're wearing masks when they go out, and they're trying to minimize their interaction outside of the home, and you know, I'm sure that they're strapped, and at least they're wearing a mask. So not everyone out there who wants to carry a gun for personal protection or the illusion of the good guy with the gun is, you know, anti-mask. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. And I don't think that's what the meme suggests. But it's trying to focus on a really specific group of people who are, you know, you can't take my guns, and it's for personal protection and public safety, and also not willing to wear a mask.
But how many of those people carry guns but also don't wear body armor? And then you're like, you know, how much of your gun carrying thing is about your dick and not actually about protection? Because if you're saying you're carrying a gun for protection, where's your fucking body armor at, man?
That's a really good point.
It's not actually, because you see about 1 in 10 of these people actually wear body armor, because the licenses you have to get to have both make you have to be more transparent, because nobody needs both. Because it's one of those things where you're like, you either need one or the other. Otherwise, if you have a machine gun and body armor, you're going to have your shit checked every year so they understand why you need those things, so you can have the licenses for both. We don't want people having a fucking howitzer and a tank and a bunch of heavy body armor.
A fucking minigun from Terminator 2.
Right. You don't need one person having all that shit in the same place unless they have a really good reason. Like, oh, I work for the military, and I also test stuff, and I also do things for movie shoots. And you're like, oh yeah, that person needs all this stuff. There's no problem with this person having all this stuff. And that person gets all of the licenses to have all of that stuff because they go through the proper checkpoints.
Yeah.
But nobody needs all of those things unless they give really good reasons why, which is why we have those checkpoints.
So recently, I think it was New Mexico or Arizona. I think it was Arizona. The governor signed into law a red flag law, meaning if you are in possession of firearms and you end up on this red flag list, county sheriffs will show up and they'll confiscate your arms and whatever else is on the list. And then within 10 days, they will provide a court hearing so that the owner of this equipment can argue their case for why they should be allowed to have it and operate this equipment. And so this is causing a little bit of an uproar, but you know, this isn't just cut and dry. It's like you got to do something to get on that list in the first place.
Thanks, Obama. I thought Obama was coming for the guns. Oh wait, it's Arizona state government?
Holy shit, Arizona's like one of the most conservative libertarian strongholds that's ever existed.
That pig fucker. Oh my god. Oh, fuck Joe Arpaio, man. He's Arizona. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I think he's Arizona, but it's either Arizona or Utah. But I know Arizona is definitely one of the more conservative states where you're like, oh, I thought Obama was coming for your guns. No, it's Arizona state government? Oh, crazy.
Yeah, well, it turns out that these problems are just they're a little bit bigger than people realize.
Yeah. I don't know, but again, I just don't take anybody seriously who has guns and doesn't have body armor anyway. So let them take their guns. I mean, you know, if they're smart enough, you could be able to print a fucking gun in 2020. But these idiots are
Oh
like
my god, yeah.
too stupid to even understand like the ubiquity of things that mean you don't need the gun industry, which is also why the gun industry was trying to stop the 3D printing blueprints from being distributed. So that created a rift within the gun community that a lot of people don't realize happened because the NRA has so much power that rift got like suppressed because a lot of those people went to the crypto community and they were creating shit like Guncoin and trying to create blockchain tracked guns. So it's like if any time somebody fired a gun, like a cop, for example, then the record of the gunfiring would be tracked to a blockchain somewhere. And the cops didn't want any of the part of that shit.
Of course not.
They didn't want any part of that shit.
Well,
So you didn't
that's
hear any
that's
of
some
that.
straight up like Judge Dredd level technology.
It is. And people had invented it, and that shit was out there at a lot of conventions where you're like, oh, it's beyond idea. People had prototypes and demos and blockchains and full on like communities for it. But the NRA made that shit just disappear as if it wasn't a thing at all. Like me talking about it sounds like some conspiracy theory Judge Dredd shit, but that's like years back. That technology is years old now.
Uh, Almost everything that's available now is years old. It just hasn't.
Yeah.
The people who own the rights to that kind of technology haven't figured out how to monetize it or how to commodify it so that they can really make money off of it. It's still in a place where, like with bullet tracking and IDing to the firearm and then the operator, it's one of those things where you can't just thrust that upon people. That alone would cause uproar and rioting. And all sorts of political unrest. So that's the kind of thing that, just like Chomsky's been saying for decades, the government has to wait for the right time to manufacture the consent of the people through a series of, I guess it's really just kind of happenstance sometimes where it's like, oh shit, this just happened. Let's enact some gun legislation. And then there are other times where it's very clearly been on the books for a long time. They've been working towards it for a long time. But that's the thing. It's not like we're gonna get any of the really cool technologies. That stuff's just being held back because they gotta extract every last drop of blood that they possibly can before they deliver the future that we've been promised. The technology that's supposed to set us free. It exists, but it's so prohibitively expensive. Or you got to work in a specific industry to access it. When if we would only pay attention to our open source brethren, they might have figured it out by now too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, the crazy part about open source is they solve so many problems, and then a big company will come in and patent all their technology that they discover or create.
Thanks, Apple.
In a roundabout way, and then that shit will never hit the market. It's crazy how many. The tech industry has perfected that sort of roundabout destruction of solutions. And over, I see people who don't know the history of tech espionage being naively optimistic about technology solving problems, not realizing how easy it is for companies to let a community build up and let the technology evolve only to swoop in and patent all of it and wipe that shit out as if that community never existed. They have perfected that shit.
Yeah.
And it makes it sound like I'm doing some conspiracy theory bullshit, which is the craziest part because big companies and organizations have gotten so good at it that when you actually learn about the history of it, you have to find it in ways that it's not from necessarily mainstream sources, or they don't talk about it frequently enough because it's still happening. So again, it's like, okay, I'll give a great example. The idea that Disney had been fucking with movie release reviews and making Fox release properties get terrible reviews was like an urban legend for a long time. So then when you have Fox selling, like 21st Century Fox selling all their or whatever, 20th Century Fox selling all their properties to Disney.
I think it is 21st Century Fox now.
Yeah, I think it is. I think they switched it. But whenever they ended up selling all their properties to Disney, that doesn't no longer sounds like a crazy conspiracy theory because that end came to fruition. So all the people who were saying that that was Disney's long-term end get validated, but people invalidate those kinds of things because corporations like Disney get so good at fighting their own anti-misinformation campaigns that it never looks like they're actually putting out misinformation, and it looks like Disney is like actually a family-oriented company that cares about your children, even though all they care about is figuring out how to extract all the money possible from you, the parent and the child, and influencing that child's development.
That's why they have divisions referred to as Imagineers. It's like a blanket title that can cover so many things. Yeah.
It's a euphemism. It makes that shit sound awesome. Like, oh, they're helping creativity and foster imagination. No, they're figuring out ways to turn your kid into money.
Yep.
That's it.
Or
That's
funnel.
all their job
they're
is.
They're turning children into a funnel or a siphon from their parents' pocketbooks. So.
And siphon from their parents' influence.
Yeah.
All they get fed is shows about how dumb their parents are and how much smarter the kids are. Because I remember taking care of one of my family members.
Isn't that the basis of the Parent Trap?
It's the basis for a majority of Disney.
No, I know, but that's that one is pretty much flat out let's outsmart the parents.
And ran with it because I would sit there and watch the Disney shows with her, and I'm like, oh my god, they're trying to make it seem like all adults are just fucking idiots, and the kids can just trick them into stuff. Because then she would turn around and try to trick me and be like, oh, my mom says I can use this knife to carve this pumpkin by myself. I'm like, no, she didn't. You saw that shit on Disney. Disney taught you to do that shit because your mom did not teach you to try to deceive me. Disney taught you that shit. And I would be like, you can't blame the parent. That shit is all on Disney for trying to make kids think that they can manipulate their parents and be smarter than their parents. They shouldn't be seeing anything remotely of that nature that undermines every parent in their home, because that shit's going to happen while their parents out trying to work or in the other room trying to Zoom and putting their kid in front of Disney because Disney gained their trust to be like, oh yeah, you can trust me in the other room for your kid. I'm just a video. I'm just a TV show. You can trust your kid in the other room with me. Meanwhile, that TV show is undermining the fuck out of that parent. Right in their own house, the parent's paying for it. But it looks innocuous because Disney's gotten really good making that shit look innocuous.
They satiate the parents with stories from their childhood or extended universes from their childhood, like Mandalorian.
Yep.
And which is, that's fine. I watched it. It was okay. I enjoyed it. Had some interesting exploration of post-Mandalorian War, characters, but I still don't feel like I learned anything. I felt like I was watching a good Western, but with lasers and flying ships.
Yeah, like you said, it was like a Western, but you learned nothing about the greater Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that I didn't already know.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly. I learned nothing that I didn't already know. It didn't add anything. I applaud Jon Favreau for being a great director.
Oh, yeah.
And working within his limitations. Because, I feel like they basically, all of the things that we wanted to get as as a reward for new information are probably in season 2, which is basically already done. And then it's like we get these things released to us in ways like Ghost in the Shell, where we got obviously half of a season presented as a whole season. Like that ending for season 1 is not an ending.
No, it's not at all. All it really did was finalize the introduction of Moff Gideon. That's it.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. Again, I think this is the byproduct of storytelling being secondhand to the profit motive. And now I think we're getting to a point where the storytelling is finally going to have to be the main motive. Otherwise, you can't get a profit if there's no actual legitimate, like the way that the Marvel and DC TV universe have been planned out with their story arcs being completely interwoven from the top character to the kid you get introduced to in Iron Man 3, having importance that eventually has to get cut because they don't want to bore the audience. It's like, you know, we need that level of every character has to be important, even if it's an extra that we think is an extra. Like, no, that person is going to be somebody that comes back in 3 movies and makes Tony Stark feel bad because their kid got killed in a battle that we were just thinking of everybody's extras. Like, no, we're supposed to realize that all those extras are actual people, and when the fucking Avengers are battling, they need to remember that there's people around. Because that's why Superman kept his power in check, and then when he finally kills Zod and we see how powerful he is, we realize why he was trying to not kill people in the first place.
Yeah.
Because he could easily, if he just fighting people and not keeping his power in check, people could die all the time, but he had to keep his shit in check. And that's why we had
Goku.
Tyson come back.
It's just like Goku. Goku knows that he can destroy the planet, whatever planet he's on. He's destroyed planets that he was fighting on. Just having to, release the power. But we're also talking about superheroes that are aware of their abilities, and they're not like they're not trying to prove that they're tough. They're trying to save people. Whereas with Iron Man, it's always like, hey, check out this new weapon I've got. Check out this new thing I've got. Or Hulk, he's always smashing things. And him, between Thor and Hulk, it's always a contest of who can smash the biggest thing or launch it the furthest. Or, they like play, I think, don't they like play tennis, one of them on the moon or something? Or they try to throw each other onto the moon? I can't remember. But that's the thing. We get these characters who they're competing with each other to show who's the baddest, and then enter Thanos, and he whoops all their asses like mano a mano.
Yeah.
And then so they've got to the big bad reveals itself, and they've got to band together and actually function like a team again, even though they've reformed several times and broken up several times. It's like a bad relationship that nobody really cares about. Like, we're more interested in watching them bicker than we are watching them succeed together. And then by the time we finally see the successful ending of the story, even though we know it's not done, they are broken and at a funeral, and it's pretty clear they're not getting back together. This is like the weirdest relationship they've made us watch. Like, if I knew a couple in real life that went through that kind of shit all the time over a decade, I probably wouldn't have paid attention. I would have tuned out because, it's just not fun.
It doesn't. There's no real emotional draw.
Yeah.
Well, and just like I said, Cicely Tyson, I meant Alfred Woodard. But the issue is, like, when you have people who are like traditionally non-important characters, it takes a lot of good storytelling to make those people feel important. And that's where I think we've come to a place now where you have to have an actual legitimate, well-written character with well-written relationships in order for people to be interested in it. Because that's where the whole reason Fat Thor worked is because we had everyone who watched the series have become emotionally invested in the character to then understand where that change came from, in that while there were comedic elements to it, like most people didn't have to be explained that it's like, oh yeah, he's traumatized, that's why he's like fucking stress eating
And
it's
drinking.
like very exactly, it's like very clear, like you feel bad for the character, and then you see why he's trying to mask his pain with like laughter and all this other shit. Like most people understood enough of the complexity of the universe not to have to be explained that level, to be like, yeah, it's not really fat shaming, this is like this character going through some shit and him like stress eating a god, the figure of a god, into something that looked like a mound of mashed potatoes, where you're like, even a 1500-year-old god needs to like redeem themselves and also overcome the feeling of failure ever so often. That's what I think in that story, the action is like a secondary to Thor's redemption arc, and I think that's why it's so intriguing and so engaging.
Yeah.
In that the action's just filler, in that he lost his family, he lost his mom, he lost his father, his stepbrother, or adopted brother, where it's like
Everything.
he lost everything, and he fucking ate himself. He ate that all away and still didn't get away from it. In that when he goes and kills Thanos, it still didn't solve it. It's
Yeah.
like there's all these things about that story that I think enough people got as to why his story isn't all action. Like a lot of his story is like him. He's playing fucking online gaming at the beginning of
Yeah.
it. You know, he's a depressed American in the beginning of the film, and that's where I think in a lot of people not realizing that depression can be a byproduct of a system in which you have no control, and then not wanting to necessarily acknowledge that depression exists because things are outside of your control. Displaying that in Thor's character, I think, is so genius on so many levels, in that it's like, dude, he's a fucking god of thunder. Even Thor gets depressed.
Yeah.
Even Thor gets depressed about shit. Whether it's the loss of his family or the loss of the feeling of being able to protect Asgard and his people, even Thor gets depressed about shit. And
Yeah.
that's what the fuck that was, man.
Well, he's still one of my favorites. He's got an interesting story, and it's incredible how they are able. Well, maybe it is the Imagineers doing their job when they manage to weave in these little subtleties into the story to make the characters more relatable to a broader audience. I thought it was really interesting, like through the entire movie, like as he kind of regains his confidence, he still holds on to the that gut. Like it's not a thing to be ashamed of. It's just part of who
Right.
he is.
And
And
you could probably get rid of it immediately if you wanted to.
sure, I mean, the guy generates electricity, right? I mean, he commands lightning. I'm sure he could fry that stuff off real quick.
Yeah, because I don't think, obviously there's magic and all the other shit in the universe, but I think literally, like you're saying, if he really wanted to, he could just like fry off fat if he really wanted to.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
I don't think.
I think if we go beyond the Disney Marvel universe, like there are versions of Thor that are approaching like oneness with the energy of the universe in a way. And like I've said this before, I've talked about Rune King Thor in the past, where it's like, you know, he eventually decides that he has to go to sleep to allow the cycle to complete itself, and then he wakes up and it starts over. And that's like, they hint at Odin, you know, taking the great sleep and waking up and everything is restored and all that. And it's like a variation of that, where we get to see Thor go to sleep and it's over. And that's like the entire lifetime of the universe essentially is in one day for Thor, between waking and slumber. So maybe there's a version of Thor, like not quite Rune King Thor, who realizes that the corporeal form is a manifestation of what he believes he looks like at that time. And so in that case, like, even as he regains his confidence and wields Stormbringer and fights Thanos, he's still holding on to that kind of, to borrow from the Matrix, the residual self-image. Because in some way, like, he has become that, and now maybe he's even more powerful because of it. Because he's not afraid of it. It's not something that brings him down. It's not something that defines him or is a measure of his value or ability. It's as simple. It's like the same as a belt at that point. I'm not trying to reduce a gut to a belt, but
no, and I really think that interpretation is one of the best, in the context of knowing that we have a character from one lore brought into a complete different lore, so there has to be I mean, he's not the only one. His whole family's brought over. So when you bring the lore from the Vikings over into another whole universe, you have to establish that connection in a way that not only makes sense, but also gives recognition to these characters having an existence in their own actual lore, which is why I think when you have something like that, it allows Marvel to play fast and loose with the concept of religion, because then they can have these lores that encompass religion and don't actually dispute them, but interweave them in a way that respects them and also gives credence to what they're trying to say in a different way as to why them presenting this story in this manner is doing the lore better justice for the modern condition, rather than trying to just duplicate Viking lore verbatim. And I think this is the difference between why traditional lore over time changes, where you have people trying to do the Odyssey play and do it exactly, as it was written, or as if it was documented, instead of trying to do something that's more of a homage to the Odyssey, that's like a reference to Odysseus, in that the Black Pearl in the Watchmen is clearly reference to the fucking Odyssey, but you don't have to call it the Odyssey to do the story in a way that's even it's a period piece.
I think
it makes sense as a redo of the Odyssey.
Yeah, I think it's important for people who are studying early language or early literature to participate in period piece reconstruction. But once it's in the hands of storytellers outside of academia, I feel like it's a reflection of creative ability. If people are going to just verbatim reproduce something that's 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old, 3,000 years old, whatever, like, eventually that's been done over and over and over and over again, and we're not getting a new story there. We're not getting a new interpretation. That means they didn't even try to modernize it so it would include new elements that could enhance the way a story is told, or create a place for where people can relate to new characters or the same character, because all of a sudden it makes sense. That's my biggest gripe, actually, about modern storytelling, is that when it's obvious what the story was in the first place and they don't try to do anything different, I just feel like I'm seeing somebody else wear the same clothes, tell the same story. But I think that's why I like The Matrix so much, because it tells us the story of, the one, and it puts it in this modern framing where we get to see all this integration of technology and visions of the future and visualizations that are just simply terrifying. But it also tells the story of, the leader who rises out from the group, who then is able to fight for all humanity against insurmountable forces while correcting the balance of the universe in a sense. So that's like a really interesting version of it. But how many times do we need to hear the story of Dionysus or Jesus or Osiris, or insert some variation of the zeitgeist? How do we move on from that and tell new stories? Well, it's really simple. We just get fucking creative and stop giving people the go ahead to write shitty stories. I mean, how many fucking shitty TV shows do we actually need syndicated, available on demand?
As if people have gone through all of them. I'm going back and going through all of the stuff that I've never seen before and finding gems in the stuff. I don't need them to make anything new for the next 3 years. There's so much content out there that I can go through everything that's ever been created for like the next 3 years and not have to make Hollywood or individual TV studios produce anything. But I get they need jobs too. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want people to risk their lives for new content when there's so much content still yet to sift through. And I think that's the problem with, it's not that entertainment is frivolous or unnecessary. It's that when we get to a point where we've started going through it so fast that we don't appreciate the shit that's out there in the first place, we overlook too much shit. And now it's time we need to go back and appreciate the people that got overlooked by the cycle that was too quick to just move through stuff when it wasn't
digestible. Did you hear about the movie that's about 3 generations of black women with superpowers? Yeah. Apparently there's a superhero movie about 3 generations of black women, like,
First I'm hearing.
Grandma, ma, and daughter. And it had like a short run in theaters, and the excuse that the marketing departments all gave was they didn't know how to market a black superhero movie.
What's the movie called?
I don't even know. Like, that's the thing. It's like, okay, before we get into this, I want to introduce our guest. We've got a special guest today. He's been a friend of mine for quite a while now. He's a very talented musician. He's a smart dude. His name is Tim Kasich, and we are very happy to have him today.
How you guys doing?
We're doing great. How are you this afternoon?
Not too bad. Woke up from a lovely nap of last night. I had a wonderful bonfire, and I soaked in some great energies from that fire and relaxed last night in my backyard.
I think that's something that we're all looking forward to being able to do as the weather gets warmer and the skies get clearer. That sounds...
Yeah, something nice and peaceful like that was very, very cumbersome to actually have again.
Good. I feel like that's the return to normalcy that people are overlooking. We can still go in our backyards and have a fire or barbecue or just eat outside. We don't have to all do that. And I realize that, some people live in apartment complexes or condos, but there's still outdoor spaces that can be utilized. It's not like the outdoors didn't get shut down. But that's one of those things that I think it gets missed. Everyone's so focused on the things that they can't do that they forget what they can do.
Having little things like that makes the human mind relax again.
Yeah.
It takes you back to a simple human aspect of, oh man, I can do this. Felt really, really good.
Yeah.
The movie that you were talking about, I think you were talking about, it was like Flash or Fast?
Fast Color. I'm just looking at all the information. Yes. I just heard about this. This is crazy. It did $75,000 at the box office.
Fast Color.
I saw the article too. I'm going to put that in my watch list.
Yeah, me too as well. Because this is the first I've even heard of it. But $75,000 at the box office, that's abysmal. That's like insanely low. That's like, I can't express how bad that is. In that people didn't hear about
do better.
Yeah. Oh man. Jesus, that's horrible advertising. As if the idea that they couldn't market a black superhero film is really an excuse for something that low. They didn't put. They could have bought enough tickets to make their own opening more than that. I bet their marketing budget was bigger than that, which they're probably gonna say, "Oh yeah, we spent on these people to give us all these reasons as to turn around and give them reasons why they couldn't pitch a black movie to the audience." I'm sure they paid more than they got at the box office for that.
They probably could have promoted it to Jordan Peele and had a philanthropist angle of, someone in the community that's able to help advertise better for it to do better.
But I don't think Jordan Peele's necessarily in the community. He's like one of the black people that's in the white community. So that's kind of where, again, it's like people like Jordan Peele, he's black, but as far as he's been in the black community for obviously his entire life, but he's not one of the people who, like, his audience isn't really black people until when you have a black film where it was like those horror movies. Black people went and watched them, but the only reason they got popular is because of white people understanding what he was trying to say, and they finally got it. And that's where I think
he was criticized when he decided to pursue the Lovecraft stuff and started casting predominantly people of color, even though almost every person in Lovecraft mythos is some white dude who is part of the Miskatonic academic institution and is using state-of-the-art technology that only the wealthiest people can afford. And it's amusing because I'm talking about wire recorders and wax cylinder recorders and early lamps that had reflectors on them to spread the light further.
And my thing is, black people ain't reading no fucking Lovecraft, and it's not because we're not smart enough. It's because we know what his fucking cat was named.
You know what it's about.
You know what his fucking cat was named. I know what his cat was named. I'm not reading that shit.
He was an outspoken xenophobe and racist.
Yeah, fuck that dude. Fuck him and his writings. I'm not reading his shit and validating his legacy. Fuck Lovecraft. I'm not gonna do it. So I don't care what his fucking shit is. It is more so the problem is when we have a culture that is like perpetually rewarding people who have shitty views as long as they do good work. I'm not going to keep validating that culture because it's wrong. It's completely wrong. When you say, "Oh, I can't separate," or "I can separate an artist from their work," that's fucked up. That's like how we get the Woody Allens and shit like that, or the Roman Polanski.
Roman Polanski is a great
shit
example.
like that. Yeah, it's like no
generic taste list.
Yeah, fuck those people. Fuck them and their work. I don't care how good it is. I'm not gonna validate it.
True. I hate that I even know anything about Roman Polanski. Like, I think the girl was 13. Like,
that story is known because everybody knows how fucked up it is that he got away with that shit.
Yeah.
And Hollywood is like, we know all the shit that people have been doing wrong, and we're at a point. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we know that the Hollywood now is featured way too draconian white because we've already seen this happen in the Golden Globes and the actor awards and stuff like that, where it's been predominantly white for years. And even when fantastic African-American culture makes amazing movies, it is still drastically overlooked in that Hollywood sense of they are draconian uber white. And I think that kind of taken a lot of effect of actually getting media and movies like that out there. If it's become too apparent that the white Hollywood wants to take over so much, these movies go to Shudder, these movies go to Hulu, these movies go to Netflix instantly. It still gets out there, but it is still kind of sending a message that there's a lot of rich old white money that's still not going to let those movies, happen in their theaters as much in Hollywood. And I mean, the whole Jordan Peele thing, man, like him getting his more horror movies up there really quick, and all of a sudden he's like a new thing for the Golden Globe Awards and Tony Actor Awards and stuff like that. And making a big stink, yes, it's you're wanting to see philanthropy happen, but the people with money do something with it that's important. He's doing an okay thing, but you're right, he has been classically in a very white world of media with Jordan or the Key and Peele shows and stuff like that.
Philanthropy.
Having the movie come out and it still do just as good is like, oh, this is the first time that we're getting to that point, and maybe we're on the new verge of, you know, of a foot being the next step forward. And now that we're going to start seeing this, yes, it is sad that Fast Color didn't get the reprieve or the receivingness of what they wanted out of it.
It wasn't even marketed though.
And so that's the bad part. They had enough budget to make the film, but they had no money to make the budget or for the advertising.
No, it wasn't even that. It was that the marketers said they didn't know how to market it.
Oh, so I'm guessing. I wonder what movie company it was that did it, because I'm guessing it was probably a room full of like probably white movie execs that were like, we're clueless on this, and that's probably the big part that needs to change. You know?
Yeah, because I know it wasn't until Black Panther came out that narrative was like fairly common. That refrain was like the reason we didn't get any, well, besides the Wesley Snipes going to jail thing, we would have had way more Blade movies that wouldn't necessarily even need Wesley Snipes, except for the fact that the people in Hollywood had created and perpetuated this narrative that nobody would buy a black superhero. Just people, they would had accepted that as that was like common knowledge. And it sounds stupid now since Black Panther did $1 billion, but that used to be
already given a black superhero. And I think Blade actually was awesome. Like, it was cartoony, but I mean, that's what I liked about it. It was like a comic book to me. It was like, it took me back to being a kid.
Well, but even then, he's not even really a hero. He's an anti-hero, and it's the same with Spawn.
I'm going to say that a vampire is a supernatural being, but isn't really a superhero.
Well, I mean, he's not even, whether, like, regardless of the superness, he's still an anti-hero.
No, I know, that's what I mean. Is like, I don't even think like Vampire Hunter D could be considered a hero. Like, even though his whole purpose is to slay vampires.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that there's no redemption from becoming a vampire or being a vampire. Just like simply being a bloodsucker. Yeah.
Because then they kill the ones that have tried to satiate their bloodthirst.
Yeah,
and that's why they become
anti-hero has always been a great edge for me on comics. I love Spawn. I love that anti-hero. Like, they're giving something really, really bad, and now they do something better with it.
Sure. I mean, we all love Han Solo. He has the most interesting character in all of Star Wars. And then when they bring him back, they kill him in the first of the third trilogy.
But then Lando's the one that sells everybody out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, come on, man. Come on, dude. Like, why you gotta fucking be the one to represent us? And then sell everybody out the door.
But Lando's a badass, though. That's the thing. Is like, once they explore his character in the Solo movie, you realize like he's not just a gambler.
He's an anarchist.
He's an anarchist. He's on the same level as Solo in terms of like knowledge, ability. He's actually smoother with the ladies than Han is. But
they're outlaw cowboys in space.
Exactly.
Well, and I think explicitly he's like, not explicitly just hetero. He's like a pan-species sexual.
He's truly pansexual.
Yeah, he's like pansexual in a way that they're trying to express like, hey, it's okay to be who you are in the more recent iteration, which is why I think when you're trying to tell a story, you have to update it for the time.
Exactly.
Like, them exploring that is like, okay, they get that some people are having problems in the real world expressing their sexuality and identity, so they're going to make this guy cool to be pan-species sexual. And it's like, it's not trying to manipulate kids.
He's also in a relationship with his robot, who is his navigator on the Falcon.
Right.
That's like the coolest part. He's in a relationship with a machine.
He's like really pan-species sexual in that when there's like a segment of America that are trying to say they're trying to convince kids to have sex with robots. And that's not what that message is, because they don't understand nuance.
You don't have to have sex with something to... Yeah. You don't have to have sex with something to be in a relationship with it. People have relationships with their phones.
But also representation matters for every segment. Like, the people who love their phones more than human beings that population needs representation too.
I call them
Like-
fondles. They're the slab
Fonz.
fondlers because they have a fondle slab that they're constantly touching. The fondle slab. It's a piece of
The fondle
glass and
slab.
plastic and metal. And
Also, I like that about Star Wars is they didn't sensationalize anything. They kind of just showed you that, hey, this is the future, this is what we could be, and then with those representations.
actually, it's the past. It's a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
A long time ago, but still ahead for us.
Yeah.
Isn't it? In our terms. But,
Like if we apply some modern quantum physics to it, the sheer distance actually means that it's probably happening. It might be happening a long time ago, but it's happening right now for us.
right now, a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
By the time it-
representations that like they don't super sensationalize it. They're just like, this is the normal. This is
Yeah.
what it's like in the future. It's not making an overstatement with any of it. That's why we were talking about a little bit earlier with what Chris was saying is like, they hyper sensationalize this one idea, and then sometimes that can ruin a movie.
Yeah.
But also, if you don't hyper sensationalize it and you just make it normal, then it has some kind of connection with the viewer that they're like, oh, this is very much so like me. I can get this.
Yeah.
Doing that is also important in like social settings of how many people are going to watch this piece of media. Is how many people can it connect to without it making it too crazy or too not relatable.
Well, that's some lowest common denominator planning right there. We want to reach the widest audience. We got to dumb it down. We want to reach the widest audience. We need to make sure that the language isn't too complicated. We want to reach
That last Star Wars movie that came out, they're literally having a train robbery in space. it's a space spaghetti western.
Oh, yeah, Solo. Solo's,
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, so I recently rewatched the Star Wars movies in sequence. And I also kind of spiced it up with the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and rewatched Mandalorian. And I was about to start the latest cartoons or whatever they were, but I kind of got sidetracked. It occurred to me that Rogue One and Solo are the most honest Star Wars universe movies that I've seen yet, because they have nothing to do with the Skywalkers.
Yeah.
It's like these are stories that have zero to do with the Skywalker clan. And for the first time, we get to see, a story that doesn't really... Well, I guess Vader appears periodically through Rogue One, but we don't know that he's Skywalker yet. And so, on some level, I feel like I'm finally getting some depth to this story. I'm finally getting to see this universe that they've been hinting at, and just how dirty and nasty it is, and just how ruthless things are.
Yeah, that was good fuel for that franchise, because I was kind of getting bored with some let's introduce a new crazy character and let's do all this. It kind of just focused on a good plot and a storyline.
Well, what's really interesting about Rogue One is that Forrest Whitaker plays this character, Saw Gerrera, and his character actually appeared in the Clone Wars cartoon series, and he was the voice of Saw Gerrera in that series too. So they've got this broad unity across the storylines, and in a lot of ways, I think that there's a really good chance for that space western to develop into something more interesting, but we're still dealing with the legacy of the Skywalkers. And so much of that story is going to be wrapped up in that kind of mythology. And I just hope that there's a way to get away from it and stay away from it. Because they've done it to death. They've done that story 3 times.
Going for. I think Lucas was kind of going for an epic space spaghetti western the whole time, really.
Sure.
And that's what his whole entire kick's been. But now it's finally getting to the point where writers are like, dude, we need to write something else.
Yeah.
There's episodes of Star Trek that are kind of space spaghetti westerns with Q in it, but then they actually get to super sensitive issues and very diplomatic topics where they actually discuss stuff in detail.
Yeah.
I do love my Star Wars, but I think I'm a bit more Trek.
The Q saga is actually one of the best non-sequence story arcs, because it spans 7 seasons. It's great.
those are my favorite episodes, man, because they talk about like the recoils and the follies of life on one, and then personal judgment on another, and partners that you're romantically involved with on another, and giving you a chance to do it again from a young age and see what it can change. And it has all these awesome string theories, because you get into a world of like Q's omnipotent and all powerful. He can do whatever he wants, but he chooses to do this.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find. Yeah, he appears in not just TNG, but Deep Space Nine and Voyager.
Yeah, because he drops his kid off for Janeway.
That's right.
Janeway to help raise his
That
kid.
was a funny episode.
That shit was amazing to me, because then
That
he's
was
like,
so damn funny.
little douchebag, and then Janeway puts him in his place. Like,
You know, so
He needed Janeway to put him in his place. Jeez.
oh yeah, that shit was amazing. That's why I loved it. Like, well, because I don't know if you guys realized, I just found this out recently. I guess whoever, I can't remember her name, whoever plays Janeway has specifically requested that her and Chakotay don't romantically hook up throughout the entire series. So that's why they like never hook up, because I don't think she wanted her captain character to have it be undermined by just her like banging shit. And it's like, they specifically had that in there from the very beginnings. So that's why that
weird tension was always there.
Was always there. So then they knew, the actors knew that their characters were never gonna have it happen. So they like played into it even more. So if you don't know this shit as the observer, you're like, oh my God, what is going on? They need to hook up. Why aren't they hooking up? But it's because they were never ever gonna hook up on one episode of that show, because she made sure that shit didn't get her. I get it, because her entire leadership would have been undermined if she had hooked up with her first.
Not just the first officer, but the leader of the Maquis.
Right. It would have never would have anybody been able to look at her as one of the best captains in Star Trek history.
She was so good.
Ever banged, it's a double standard that sucks, obviously, because fucking Kirk banged everything.
She was such a good captain that they decided to build a statue of her in Bloomington here in the past.
That's amazing.
So we're going to get a fucking Janeway statue, because, in the story, she's from Bloomington, Indiana. So we're going to get a Janeway statue.
Aren't they talking about doing that off the Beeline Trail here soon?
I think so.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
we're going to get a bronze bust of Janeway here.
No,
That's
it's
awesome.
a full statue.
Oh, full statue?
Yeah, like the Kirk statue.
Dude, that's going to be awesome.
Well, because then you gotta, I find it, whenever people talk about they're moving away from Bloomington, I'm like, there's a whole entire fucking Star Trek series about somebody trying to get from the goddamn Delta Quadrant all the way back to Bloomington.
Back to Bloomington.
You trying to leave Bloomington? This motherfucker was on the goddamn other side of the entire multiverse, not just the universe. She was going through space-time fluctuations to get to Bloomington, and you're trying to leave? Really? Okay. You know better than Janeway. I guess. Okay.
Right? This place is the trap, man. I've seen so many people just come back here, and I was like, dude, you're Captain Janeway.
Right. No, somebody told me, they warned me it was a trap before I came, and I left and came back because I understand the rest of the world fucking sucks for the most part. Like, why spit something in the face when this place is awesome? If it's walkable, things are mostly affordable. Guess what? When the supply chain breaks down, everything is still accessible in Bloomington because it's stocked for a fucking bunch of people that never came back. So we're in the fucking one of the best places on the planet. Janeway told us. Janeway told us
10 years ago.
Janeway said it. So who am I to overlook what Janeway was saying for 7 goddamn seasons?
Holy shit. She said that in 95, and the final episode was in May of 2001. So she was like 20 to 25 years ahead of the curve and trying to warn us, hey, Bloomington's the spot.
She wasn't trying to go to L.A., San Francisco. Harry Kim was staying trying to get to San Francisco. Janeway's like, give me fucking Bloomington. I just want some fields and some fresh air.
Right? I think it was because the writers on the show, two of the writers on the show were graduates from IU Bloomington. And when they developed the story for her character, they were like, oh, let's make her from Bloomington.
Dude, one of them spoke at one of my graduations. So I know.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, again, that's like, that's exactly why they made it Bloomington. Because she came back. She's like, yeah, Bloomington's still awesome. When I come back in 2007 or whatever to speak at somebody's graduation, like, I mean, not my graduation personally, but it just happened to be our year.
And I do like that comment on her and Chakotay, because man, he always had the searing glares at her, like, dude, he wants her, and he they played it into the show like he'd always do that one, like the Dwayne the Rock Johnson rock eyebrow.
Well, and she,
like,
the rock
look
eyebrow.
at Janeway, and you're like, you know it's there.
Well, because I just watched an episode recently where he went into the past, and she was like trying to question him at first, and he's giving her all this advice, and she's like, just how close do we get in the future? And he's like, there's some bridges we never cross. And she's like, okay, that's cool. So they go, like, they both acknowledge it as characters, but they both never cross it, which is that makes it even more hilarious in retrospect when you find out that it was her decision, because the writers would have had it in there at some point.
Oh yeah.
Like, even Data got laid.
Data got laid in within the first episode, or the first three episodes, and it took Picard 2 years, I think, or no.
Does everything work?
I think
they function at normal parameters.
I think it took Picard 3 seasons to get laid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Well, you don't want your most diplomatic, the one with the most diplomacy and talking skills amongst all these different scenarios of different species and planets to have a romantic weakness really, really fast, because they still gave Janeway a romantic episode eventually.
Yeah.
She let her hair down, and good Lord, did she look gorgeous.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we all know that Jean-Luc and Beverly had a thing.
Oh yeah,
and not just a thing, because they admit that they get married later in the All Good Things finale. But
because they're even smart about it with Discovery in that when they have Lorca banging everybody, it's to make him look like a bad guy. Like, it's no longer a good thing to have your captain banging everybody. You just can't have that.
Well, and they even talk about how Crusher and Picard got divorced in one of the episodes of the Q when they were jumping them around.
Yeah, that's All Good Things. That's the finale.
That's All Good Things. Yeah. I just watched that the other day. Have you guys caught up on Picard?
Oh yeah,
that was amazing. Like, again, it's like, okay, if I'm realistic, it's a 7 out of 10.
It's season 3, episode 19.
I love what they're doing with it.
Season 3, episode 19, called Captain's Holiday. He goes to Ryza and he meets this. Where's her name? It's the chick that follows him around that wants to. Vash. Yeah, it's the chick that goes off with Q to explore the universe. And comes back and she's got some crazy disease and some shit. She's been trying to sell goods. And this is on DS9, and she's all over the place too. But it took almost 4 seasons for Picard to get some.
And he's got some gravitas, man. He's got some prestige behind him.
Oh yeah.
And I think one of the things that they showed in the new series, and one of the things I'm starting to realize in the Star Trek universe is, in a lot of cases, when you get women captains, they'll get to a point where they're about to have a big war, but then they'll stand down. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people may not see as to why they don't necessarily like these series, because they don't give you the same battle sequences, because I think they're trying to show something different in that, when you have women leaders, the results are different. You may have all of the Klingon ships, all of the Federation ships about ready to go to war. But if it's a woman at the helm versus a man, you're probably going to get a completely different outcome. Well, I think why these different universes are playing out.
I think Michelle Yeoh's Terran Empress was awesome. When they killed off the captain of the Sojourner, and then they reintroduced her as the Terran version, and she's a ruthless, can not just kick everyone's ass, but really kick everyone's ass. They're invading the the stronghold castle, whatever it is, and she's like, Michael Burnham, get out of here. I'll give you time. And then she's like got one weapon, like a rifle, and like the palace guards are all coming to kill her. And lo and behold, she reappears in like the next episode or the 2 episodes later, and it's like, okay, well, I actually kind of expected that. I think
I would have rather seen the battle.
Well, we don't need to see the battle because she survives, and so we know that she's like, super bad.
I like the overall, like, even all the way from Picard all the way to earliest Star Trek, the idea of like the exploring new places, and for the most part, most episodes did a really good job of like when the Ferengi got introduced, and then like they start explaining their culture and like what they do. And they're like, okay, well, it's different than our own, but we got to deal with it. Or where Tasha Yar had to do the fight on a different planet, and they're like, you're on our planet now. Like it showed people that are not used to customs of their own, but showed them trying at least. And I didn't see that in a lot of like sci-fi, fantasy, or adventure TV show. Most of the time, as growing up as a kid, it's always been like, I'm busting in the door because I got to do this. Well, it's never,
Star Trek,
I'm here to talk to you.
I think the Federation, not necessarily the original series, but Next Generation, they did a pretty good job of trying to not colonize places.
Yeah.
They did a really good job of the Prime Directive. That was the whole point. It's like, hey, we're not going to interfere with like internal issues.
Except Janeway.
Well, Janeway had to because they were in the
and they addressed sometimes you have to, and I think that's where they addressed that she ended up owning up to her responsibilities for her actions, in that when she gave the technology to the I forget the name of the species, but they ended up coming back and they had been hunting holograms, holographic species, and then the holograph became sentient and then tried to escape, and then they tried to deceive the Voyager people. So there was all these things, and she was like, because I did these things, I have to own up to it. And then because the doctor got wrapped up in it, she owned up to her giving his autonomy to him as being part of it in the first place. So she couldn't blame people for doing what she empowered them to do. So that was like a good example of like, when she had the power to wipe away her mistakes, even though her mistakes then started impacting other people's existence, she didn't let her responsibility go to her head and say, well, now I don't have control over these things, because even though I initiated them, it's my responsibility to make sure that they get their autonomy preserved, even if they try to deceive me, because that's my responsibility at the end of the day.
Yeah, so, accountability in a bad situation.
Yeah, and that's, obviously it's fiction, but they could have gone a different way with that story to make her come off a different way. But she, like I said, she owns up to her shit.
Well, we make these stories to reflect on ourselves, and we're just showing ourselves what silly creatures we are through these things, and being able to show, humility, humanity, and accountability. If after already seasons you have this respect for this made-up sci-fi character and the things that they do in the show, when you see them screw up, you're like, they don't do this. They would never do this. But then they actually do it, and you're like, how are they going to get out? And at the end, they're just honest and accountable. There's not a lot of shows that do that. And I think that, like, growing up, especially watching that stuff like that when I was a kid, watching your captains be held accountable, watching the comic relief screw something up and try to fix it, and then admitting they can't, that didn't happen in a lot of shows. That's why maybe some of these shows, and especially like Star Trek, were kind of like it always got labeled as nerd, or this culture that we're going through where people insult intelligence now. It's like, oh, that show's too smart, it's dumb. It's like, it doesn't make sense. But when you sit, like, I've just binge watched all of TNG and Deep Space Nine with my partner, and like we were going back, and it was like, this is diplomacy in space. They actually talk about problems, whereas all the other shows I've watched when I was younger just created them and then see where the pieces fell.
Well, they not only do they create the problem, but then they go from invader into neo-colonialism by, oh, well, we're going to clean up this mess, and it's really just so they can occupy. It's a
Yeah,
foothold.
let's cover up this mistake and say we did something better.
And so if we create a story where the foothold is established by the invading force and it's on, from the viewer's side of the glass, they're fighting for us and we're going to get the benefit of this. And, they might tell a few stories about how the locals are suffering, but, it doesn't matter because the locals are just causing problems for the colonialists at that point.
No, I love the intro part of Picard, and it's basically they're dealing with a whole entire Romulan extinction on Mars and the androids turning on them, and all of these can be used for euphemisms of things that are going on in our daily lives right now. We're trying to help a group of people, we put them over here. Another smaller group of people make a backlash, and it goes really, really, really wrong. And then somehow all of this that Captain Picard didn't do. Now the finger's on him because he promoted the idea of saving people, but other people made it go wrong, so he gets the blame. What does he do with it? And he gets upset, but he does the best he can do with the actions that he's able to do. And I don't see a lot of heroes doing that anymore. I see a lot of, I've watched all of the Defenders and everybody that's involved with it, and it's they're instantly, I got to do this because I know it's wrong, and they go out and try to beat ass on it. Whereas other, in Picard and shows that have a bit more of the talk and dialogue and diplomacy, it's showing them exercise their brain power before they're throwing fists. And I think that is a message that I have not seen a lot of goodness in as of a lot of late shows coming out. I fell in love with Magicians because simply they do talk about stuff, and then they have to work together as teams to do certain spells and stuff, instead of just going out and being all willy-nilly, villain with it or superhero with it. They just get all these crazy scenarios, and as friends, they join together to figure out their best way out of it.
Yeah.
And shows like that are ones that really, really hook me, that are introspective and intellectual shows.
I really like Magicians, but it's because of the way that it is written, it's really hard to sit through a full season just because it's so abstract. I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, but even that show goes so far sometimes I'm like, okay, I need to take a break because that just blew my mind in a way. I don't think it's, sometimes it's borderline in a bad way, but it never actually traumatizes you as the audience in a way that is not
embarrassing to watch kind of thing.
Right, and it's all for the sake of the plot in a way where once you get to you have to give it the chance to unfold, because then you're like, oh my God, okay, I see where you're trying to go with this, and I see why you went there earlier, and it makes sense now. But if somebody doesn't get here, they're gonna not appreciate this show for what it really is, because it's you really have to go far into that show, because I'm not trying to ruin it, because there's a lot of layers to that show, in that it's a really good sci-fi show, it's a good magic show, it's a good philosophical exploration. There's a lot of layers to that show, but it's not for everybody, and I don't recommend it for everybody because of the complexity and nuance that it takes to get through. I haven't finished the most recent season, but I probably will at some point. But again, it's that show, it's like Dungeons and Dragons in that it's just not for everybody.
Yeah. See, I had to wait until it was almost over, and then I just downloaded it all and binged it, because with shows like that have those complex layers, if I have to wait every single week, I lose certain parts of continuity with the storyline, and then I end up just going back and watching it again anyways, and then it turns out that, episode 2 I watched 20 times, where episode 10 I watched once. So I waited.
Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just well written enough, it doesn't matter.
And I went through the whole entire continuity. What I've liked or would have seen with it is, even though they did get canceled on Sci-Fi, that if they got a little bit more grown up with it and maybe got it pitched to Hulu or Netflix or Shudder or something like that, where the writers had a little bit more freedom of not making it so much a Glee musical episode and making it more of the show of being a magician and expanding on that a little bit more.
How much more grown up are you
Sci-Fi was
talking
making them
about?
hit a target.
Really? I felt like they were pushing all the boundaries personally.
Oh, and it looks like we're taking a short break Here's a little Johnny Hassel.
Guessing we had the
And we're back.
So we were discussing the adultness of magicians. And I think in general, the adultness of some shit is like, I think that's a good topic to discuss philosophically, because I think like, let's like examine, because you may mean one thing and like I'm thinking another thing, because like when you say that, I'm like, my initial reaction is they fuck all the time on magicians. They just don't show it. It's like they're constantly fucking, but they're classy enough about it where I don't think you ever see any actual like genitals, which is like, that's once you get to a certain point, it's just porn. If you want porn, just go look at a porn, which is fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with porn. It's more so,
well,
like,
some types of porn are fucked up, and we don't.
Well, but we discussed this with you never have Aquaman fuck, but you have Bruce Wayne fuck in the DC universe, and that shit was inconsistent in a way where, because it's so glaringly inconsistent, you don't have to show it, but we know Bruce Wayne fucks because he woke up in a bed with a random unnamed person, or I think it was even two chicks in one scene, and that's all you need to see to understand that this is an adult character. We don't need to see them have sex to get like they're an adult. But we never, like, we have Aquaman running around shirtless, people thirst trap, like Aquaman thirst trapping on Instagram, never acknowledging he ever has one girlfriend or a girlfriend or whatever.
Here's the thing about Aquaman, and I think it's the hard truth that nobody actually wants to think about or acknowledge. He doesn't reproduce the way that we do. His woman goes and lays a bunch of eggs in a fucking mucus sack, and then he goes over and fucking spurts that shit out all on top of it like a fish does. Nobody wants to think about like Aquaman reproducing like that. Nobody wants to think about Jason Momoa like kneeling down on the seafloor and jerking one off so that he can fucking fertilize the eggs.
Well, now that you say it,
now that I've thrown it out there, people will realize, holy shit, we've been lied to this entire time. That's why he has such badass tattoos, because he realizes that's how it works. He knows.
I mean, think of Superman trying to get laid. Is he just going to rip her in half? Or, like, does
Wonder
Killer
Woman
Croc have a killer girlfriend?
Wonder Woman is the only woman who can withstand that kind of...
No, man. That whole premise is one of the reasons why people who've been fans of the comic books have been saying that, like, no non-Kryptonian, or like, unless it's like Wonder Woman, could have a child that wouldn't punch through their stomach, or like,
like he would just murder a human.
Yeah, if it's like,
and the Christopher Reeves one, he had to turn into human to have sex with her.
Yeah,
because of the fact that he would kill her if they tried.
I mean,
superhero sex, ladies and gentlemen, superhero sex.
Well, they addressed that shit in The Boys. Which is why, again, you have certain, like, comic book adaptations that will address the more adult themes of these things, where you're like...
Dude, the Batwoman comic is actually pretty dope. I've been digging that. The new Harley Quinn Fox adult DC world that they've been playing. Harley Quinn's got her own show. They have a girl-on-girl kiss with Ivy. Like... Bane's more subtle and just talks about background stuff. He doesn't really break stuff a lot of times. He's got like a moral point.
In the microcosm where Bane and Ivy both exist, Bane is like her servant because she's totally in control of him with her
neurotoxins.
Yeah, her Ivy powers. Like that's one of those things. Like I like Bane as Batman's foil, but I think it's more interesting when they reveal that somebody like Ivy can completely manipulate him just by making sweet eyes at him.
Yeah, I like what they're doing with the new adult DC comics. Me and my roommate have been recording them at home and watching them, and they are touching on a new subject, but they're allowed to cuss in the show, and it's very adult oriented. And Harley doesn't need Joker because he's a womanizing piece of shit. Well,
she never needed him,
and she never needed him. And like for the teens that I know that are staying up late and sneaking around their parents and watching this show, I don't think it's doing anything bad. I think it's showing them the already adult world they're seeing, but putting it in an aspect that it can relate to them.
Yeah.
And I mean, God, I wish I had more shows like that when I was a kid. That would have been amazing because, all the times my parents laughed at jokes and I was just like, completely didn't know. Like, you know how many times they make sexual references in Ghostbusters, and my parents laughed when I was a kid, and I had no clue what Bill Murray was talking about or why the ghost was trying to blow Ray.
Same shit with Cosby Show, man.
Yeah.
There's all these sexual jokes in all these shows that kids just don't understand in most of the context because you have to be an experienced adult to understand.
Wasn't that the backlash against the Teletubbies? Because one of them had a upside down purple triangle for its headpiece and carried a purse, but they were supposed to be non-gendered characters, and they didn't like the purse, and they thought it was and when you rubbed their tummies, they would giggle and coo or some shit because they're babies.
White people freak out over anything.
Yeah.
And it was probably a big group of Karens or something that complained about Teletubbies.
Right. Karens with attitude.
We had a name for them, we just didn't find it yet. And now we're at a day and age that we can definitely put, a title to that.
I thought back
the
in the
whole
day,
Tipper Gore thing.
No. I thought back in those days we called them Becky's.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah. No, they've evolved. So, like, it's a Pokemon. They start out as a Becky. They evolve to a Karen.
This is it. The Karen is not the final form. We just need to keep that in mind. There's still room for another evolution here.
Well, a flock of Karens is a complaint, and once they get their evil villain power up enough, they're going to evolve into something else. Like Tipper Gore doing the parental advisory on, Zappa's album when it had no lyrics.
Ooh, no,
the complaint's going to outdo itself.
I think that you've just projected, at least for me, a very dark future where Karen's final form is mother.
Pence's wife? Yes, mother.
I'm just saying, like, there's a very dark place where we're headed.
Like in the future, like Coles are just like a Terminator war zone.
Wait, aren't they kind of already?
I mean, kind of. I mean, they got to stop shop for those deals, man. Those discounts are ridiculous, man. They get cutthroat.
Yeah, I don't shop at Kohl's. Somebody used somehow somebody had got a bank card in my name, like a credit card in my name, and then they bought a almost $300 suitcase, and. Yeah, at Kohl's. And so I got a hold of Chase. I was like, hey, what's going on? Why am I being charged $300 at Kohl's of all places? And so they're like, oh, this is, no problem. We'll figure this out. Let us do some research and call you back. Because they escalated it to like identity theft real quick. And so they call me back later that day, and they had the Kohl's representative on the line, and the guy's just like, no, I can't help you. I'm sorry. And like, okay, well, it didn't even ship to any address that I am aware of. Like, it's clearly not my purchase. Like, yep, sorry, I can't help you. It's like, seriously, this is how Kohl's deals with theft of other people's money and their product. Because
if they can't catch the methed out white women stealing it right there in the store, they just give up on it.
No, they bought it. It was shipped through the mail. Like, somebody purchased this thing and had it shipped somewhere.
So they had records of it. They just didn't want to help.
Yeah, they knew exactly where it went. They knew when it was ordered. They could have, if they'd have been, they didn't have anyone there, like myself or Chris, who would instantly think it's like, let's look at their IP address and their MAC address and just see if they were smart enough to use, like, to mask their physical hardware.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, I don't think that's the case. Somebody who's buying something from Kohl's for $300 and that's it. I don't think that they're on a big scam.
I'm 6'3", 34 waist, really long inseam. If someone tells me they have a pair of jeans for $7 that are gray, I might go there and just buy them all. But that's the only time I ever want to cover my eyes for that long in a department store. Like, I don't really want to attend that place ever, but it's really hard to shop for shoes and jeans in my size, man.
Yeah. I'm pretty average size, so that whenever I look for shoes, there are none. Like 10 and a half, I can't find them anywhere.
Yeah, they get bought out instantly. Size 13, Every store buys one pair. Someone buys it. They don't have it in the store. I go into the store and I'm like, I want to try this shoe on to see if it's comfortable. And the clerk always looks at me with the same dumb response and says, well, I can order it for you online. And I'm holding my phone, mind you, where I could just go online and order my own damn shoes if I wanted to. The point of it is I want to try them on to see if they're going to hurt like hell or not.
Yeah.
And I usually have to hit like a Ross or something if I want to get cheap shoes. Like I'm paying $90 for basic stuff that falls apart in 3 months.
That's the thing. I think that's I'm all about some online shopping. I love getting packages and not having to go places. I really prefer to not have to go anywhere unless I have to. But sometimes, like you just described, you can't just throw money away at a pair of shoes because that's going to protect your feet. That's gonna.
I've been watching a lot of Naked and Afraid, and you need shoes,
dude. You need shoes. Shoes are like, if your feet get fucked up, you're hobbling around for some period of time.
You get an infection in your foot, you're done, dude.
Oh yeah. That's why there's a whole entire like foot care industry that's like secondary to our healthcare industry, where it's like, here you can buy these low grade like creams and antifungal medications, and all that stuff does is create a situation where whatever's there gets worse.
Yeah, it's gonna fester and stuff. Like I got a good pair of like Nike Monarchs. I know they look like the ultimate white dad shoe, but man, they're like a skate shoe, walk shoe, basketball shoe, and they're comfortable as hell.
No, the ultimate white dude shoe is a New Balance. Like, they're like, fight me on that shit. Like, it's legit.
They're dad mall walking shoes, but man, they are comfortable as hell.
So here's the thing: when I was trying to find a pair of running shoes, my logic was behind it was like, okay, who puts the most miles on their shoes? Fucking ultra marathoners. So I went and tried to research what shoes ultra marathoners were using, and I found this company called OnCloud, which nobody has ever heard of because they put like no money into advertising. All their money goes into research into the fucking shoes. So like, they're kind of expensive, but you'll never hear about them because they don't market themselves because they don't need to. Because once you find out, like I've put over 1,000 miles on the shoes that I still have. They're a little beat up, but I put 1,000 miles on them. Where
on running, Cloud Terry. Well, it's all Terry. Oh, Cloud Waterproof. Holy crap, they've got a whole fucking shitload of shoes. Dude,
their shit is amazing, and that's where I'm like, you'll never hear about them because they don't care about trying to make somebody aware of their brand. I couldn't tell you
Cloud Dip
anything that make you recognize their logo because they don't advertise it, and that's where again it's like.
No, this logo, it's it says on. I know it says on because I'm on the website, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what that was. It's like a person. It's a person waving, maybe. No, it's a person looking up at the sky, and they've got thick glasses or binoculars, or maybe it's a telescope.
And what was the brand called again?
On-running.com. And they've got women's shoes here. The technology. Man, this isn't a bad website. This is a really thorough website. It's clean.
Yeah, see, like I've always got my pair of boots because usually I keep a pair of boots for just like industrial use. If I was riding a motorcycle, going to a concert, like I bought a pair of Doc Martens steel toes, and one year bought them at a Riot Fest up in Chicago. Wore them that whole entire weekend. Walked around 3 days, 37 miles, multiple bands. Walked all through the city. Walked all through here in Bloomington. Used them on a motorcycle. They last a solid 2 or 3 years with minimal maintenance.
Crap. This company's got like several different types of treads. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers just in the footbed.
How much are they running for usually?
Like 100,
or what do they say they're going for?
120 to 129 to 149.
I mean, dude, Chris, if you're getting like more than 1,000 miles on, see, that's actually worth it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's actually worth, like, when you buy shoes as an adult male, they're gonna be at least $70 most of the time if you're not going to the sale rack, and you gotta go to something that's not on the sale rack to find something that's not gonna tear down or like fall apart after a month. And these, I went through a bunch of different shoe brands and found this from a shoe specialist. That's where I was like, the only reason I even found out about this brand because I went to a bunch of different places like the Finish Lines, and I found this little mom and pop store, and the dude told me about this, and he's like, these are what the ultra marathoners use. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll see. Like, I'll take your word for it, man, because he was like, I promise you, the ultra marathoners, they all swear by these. And sure enough, over 1,000 miles later, man, easily over 1,000 miles. And I'm being conservative. It's probably more than that.
Yeah, I'm on the lookout for another like good shoe too, because when I was drumming, like I need something I can comfortably sit down in and beat the crap out of, but I need to have something I want to go walk around in too. Like, and like for me right now, like my friend's the one that gave me these pair of Monarchs. His dad unfortunately passed away a few years ago, and his dad was the same shoe size as me, so I got two pairs of them at once, and one's my yard shoe and one's my walk around shoe, but I have not had luck finding anything that can fit my damn size 13 feet comfortably and last long, man. Last time I bought a pair of skate shoes, I bought a pair of Osiris's. I got into my fourth kickflip and the whole entire nose ripped off on the toe.
So I just tagged a buddy of mine, Shan Riggs, who is an ultra marathon runner, and see if he's familiar with those shoes. I'm sure he is. He's one of those guys that doesn't have like toenails. Like he runs that much.
Yeah.
He when I first met him, I know this guy because of rave culture. He's a good guy, but I remember the first time I met him, like I think it was his sister, one of our friends was like, "Show him your toes," and it's like, whoa, missing toenails. And before that, like I'd never met anyone who ran that kind of distance, and so that kind of concept was very foreign to me, like almost non-existent foreign. And apparently it's a fairly common thing for people who run that much. And not just that, like this dude like runs barefoot, runs all on all kinds of terrain, raises money.
The naturalist runner.
He wears shoes also, but raises money by running across entire states. Like,
oh wow,
like,
that's dope.
That's cool stuff.
Yeah.
So there's something about that whole like ultra marathon universe that I don't know very much about it at all, just what I've casually observed from his feed, but some of it's pretty damn interesting. Like it takes these runners to places that we just don't see, so I think there's something to it, something that's like lost in the description of the activity. It's not just like a person running around a city for forever. Like,
No.
Yeah.
Well, because then you find out about the there's like, I forget the name of the tribe, but they like put rubber on their feet and then they drink a bunch of low alcohol corn beer and then run ultra marathons. So it's like you don't need the shoes. It's not about that. The whole thing is like it could be done with rubber painted on your fucking feet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not what I'm talking about as far as
the hashing, where you drink a mild amount of alcohol and go run.
Right.
Don't feel the impact as much.
Yeah, and because again, it's it's low alcohol.
Asher's here in Bloomington in the wintertime.
Yeah, it's apparently an easy way to carb load for a long distance, super
and then
long
you
distance.
sweat out the alcohol before it actually has a chance to hit your system too.
Yeah.
So like you're getting the numbing effect of the alcohol. You're not damaging your liver because you're just sweating out the booze before it has a time to course through your veins. But it makes the impact absorption of doing the running. The wintertime around here, they do wintertime hash group for some of the students, and they set up like hot toddy stations all over campus. And they have to go and run these little each station has two branches that branch off it. One's the correct way to the next checkpoint, the other one's not. And so if you screw up and you pick the wrong one, you got to come all the way back and go back around. But then you get your hot toddy, you get warmed up in the winter, you get your little booze going on, you get numb again in your joints, and then you go running again. And by the time you get to the next hash station, you don't feel your joints again anymore, and all the booze is back out of you. So it's like a drink and run in the wintertime.
Well, and you can do that with lifting too, but you really have to be disciplined to keep it to one beer.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, it's like a lot of people don't have that discipline to only do one, because the difference between 1 and 2 is a huge difference. And then that's where you end up, obviously everybody's
pull a muscle.
Yeah, exactly, because you're too numb. And I think that's, again, it's not about, there's all these different things about it where you have to be super disciplined to be that person that's able to drink one beer or one hot toddy and go running.
Yeah, NoFX said it best for me: moderation in moderation. So if you ever try to go do something, don't overdo it right off the bat. Moderate yourself.
Yep.
That's the whole that's antithetical to the whole concept of pregame.
Yeah.
you can't
doing Uber here in Bloomington, dude. I've seen some horrible pre-gaming.
Oh God, I can only imagine. Well, I've got some buddies who do the Uber and Lyft stuff, and some of the stories I hear, and you've actually shared some too. Actually, I think I might be thinking about some of your stories, but it's quite incredible what people will do in somebody else's car when they don't feel any obligation, like beyond paying them. Whereas, like, I highly suspect those people would never behave like that in their friend's car or their parents' car or their own car. But, you know, because they only see it as a taxi that they're paying a premium for because they chose to go someplace and consume alcohol.
Well, I've had a demographic that I've had in the car of some of the college kids around here that are expecting that they bought me for that 3-minute ride. Like, they're like, I paid you, didn't I? Then you're going to do this for me. I'm like, dude, but this is still my car. Like, this isn't your property. This is mine. They're like, yeah, but, you know, that whole $4 you're getting from me, I own you right now, right? And I get, like, you know, some of the kids, they want their song played. You know, if I can accommodate, I can accommodate, you know. Or I just try to make sure that I have really cool beats playing in the car to begin with, because I understand the aspect of if you want to calm down children when you want to take them somewhere, you got to kind of play them something familiar. So I kind of look at it as an aspect of like a mother loading up their car going to Walmart. I have to predict what their actions are going to be like. I'm like, oh, they're going to act like toddlers between this hour and this hour, so I'm going to put on some like candy rave style stuff. And they get in the car and they totally stay calm. They don't freak out because I'm already playing something that is familiar to them.
Oh my God, that's too funny, man.
That was brilliant.
Dude, it happens a lot. It happens a lot, dude.
Oh my God, I can only imagine. Oh.
Like, I usually have breath mints because most of the dudes just puked from drinking Kamchatka vodka mixed with something that it shouldn't have been mixed with. And you can smell the vodka on them getting into the car, and like, I'll just have like a stick of Mentos. Like, dude, trust me, the ladies are gonna love you for this, and just because they reek so bad. Like,
oh my God,
it's permeable. Like, they can get out of the car, and that smell lingers in my car. I have to roll down the windows.
I've got a really strange. Maybe it qualifies as it was one of those absurd challenges. It's it's a variation of the Diet Coke Mentos, you know, foaming action. So instead of dropping it into the soda bottle, what if a person consumed Diet Coke and then swallowed a bunch of Mentos?
Would you just projectile foam?
Yeah, this is projectile foam. There's people done it.
Okay.
Because I've seen the banana and Sprite stuff on Tosh.0, and that was absolutely hilarious. But I would like to see a drunk college kid have Diet Cokes in the car already. Just hand them one on the way out after giving them a Mentos. You should probably drink that before you go in the bar. You know, burn some of the gas out, and then watch them just like in line at Brothers. Just like, it's not really harmful, and it would be really funny for everyone except for him.
Yeah, it's not harmful.
Not saying I'm going to do that to any of the kids at all. Like, I'm just saying, in a scenario, if that was like a comedy skit for like a TV show, that would be hilarious. I went to the grocery store the other day with my roommate. We were coming back from the grocery store, and we were going through downtown the night that all this quarantine, the night after all this quarantine started lifting. And Brothers opened up early in Bloomington on the Bloomingtonian Facebook page. The guy that does reporting went out and took pictures of downtown, and Brothers was the only one open up. Video Saloon wasn't, Bluebird wasn't, the Kilroys, both of them, they weren't. I think Nick's and Upstairs were. But there was a line in an hour that went around the block to get in to Brothers the moment they said they were online and saying that they were opening. And so the guy that reports for the Bloomingtonian went downtown and, you know, walked around, observed, and then started taking pictures when it looked like it hit peak volume of who was going to show up. And it was absolutely saddening on some of the pictures, but someone above the Princess Theater took a projector and aimed it at the wall next to Brothers, and it said, "Stay the fuck home," in gigantic typewriter typed letter print on the side of a downtown building. "Stay the fuck home," in big, and it was up all night. It was up the entire night. He's got photos of it on his story on the an article on his page for the Bloomingtonian, and it was just like, we passed by, and me and my roommate were just watching underagers still trying with fakes to get into Brothers. And being a door guy as long as I have, and doing Crazy Horse and Bluebird and Yogi's and Bear's Place, and watching all of it, like you see the demographic of the underagers come out with their fake IDs usually when there's a lot of people that are of age out, and they kind of blend in with the crowd and get lost in the herd. But now that herd's not here, that crowd is not here, so these underage kids are standing out like a sore thumb. And there's just lines of them getting denied in because they want to go drink at a college bar right now. And they don't realize that since that huge crowd's not out there, we can see them all plain as day now.
Yeah. I feel like the old school rites of passage are losing their meaning. They're losing any sense of value.
They were saying things are going to have to change, and this is part of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for the longest time, a rite of passage in Bloomington was to go to Sanders Quarry and jump off a rooftop and prove that you were a townie. And now that place has been leveled, and you can't do that anymore for obvious safety reasons. All of downtown, what used to be that strip of Kirkwood, which used to be populated with inviting shops and places where you could, explore really interesting things, has turned into corporate food outlets. And
it is creature comfort impulse buy strip. It is just give me your money, get out of here really quick businesses. And I miss it when it was the thriving of people. I do miss seeing everybody just get along and no one cared. It's like back in the day what Yogi's was for me. It's like we had the service industry crowd, we had the college crowd, we had the local crowd, and everyone got along. No one was mad.
Yeah.
We got the industry people over there playing pool, and then we got some college student servers that just got off that wanted some mini corn dogs, and we got the local dude over there that just came in to watch golf that was friends with class. It was such a mix. It was such a beautiful time to have that mix, and it felt so good to watch so many people. You can walk all the way from Yogi's over to the Vid, and you got the same thing. You just had this huge mix of crowd of people, and everyone was getting along. And it feels like we just had a lot of corporate idea takeoff, not actual corporations, but it seems like Bloomington did make a turn to only funnel one type of money into their accounts, and then now we don't have that one type of people here. I mean, the last demographic came out is that Bloomington is now a year-round close to 80,000 people a year, and you can look up on their .gov site that this town was only designed to handle 65,000 people 30 years ago on their water taps.
Yeah.
And we're shoving in somewhere from 127 to 137,000 students a year now. So we triple or we double our population, triple our population almost in a night when school starts here.
Same roads.
Well, Bloomington gets about 50,000 students a year, and our standing population is 84,900, and that was 2 years ago. So it's probably closer to 90,000 at this point. Who knows?
And well, think of the tourism that we get off that, the guest speakers and all the international students that just come here for seminars, and we get a lot of the tourism of just like the musical and arts department here. So on top of the student body and the local body and all the tourism we get here for international harp competition, international violin competition, all the wonderful plays that IU puts on, we shoved so much into a small town that we actually started hitting a brink last year. There was a water main on Kirkwood that exploded because they tried to put in a new business and a new water main, and the back pressure just ruined it. And right out in front of CVS on Kirkwood, in that intersection between Mardon Salon and CVS, I was driving Uber that day. The entire street exploded about 4 feet up in the air, broke all the pavement, and all the water mains broke, and it was flooding dirty brown water into.
What street was this again?
It was Kirkwood. It was right in between that new CVS downtown and the Mardon Salon out in front of the theater.
Where Ladyman's used to be.
And the whole entire middle of the street, just the pavement just cracked, and I heard it, and it just 4 foot up. The ground just can't. And there's just dirt water
that doesn't
everywhere.
surprise me. Maybe it's like 10 years ago. Maybe it was a while ago. There was a section of on 3rd Street between Grant and Lincoln, I think that the water, that like the sewer pipes themselves, like the things that people can walk around in, had eroded away to the point that the brick that was underneath the asphalt was visible, and they had to shut down significant portions of Bloomington so that they could go and fix the infrastructure, because you don't want a bunch of cars dropping down like 6 feet, like all of a sudden, or 8 feet all of a sudden, and then creating some horrible like shitstorm, like literally a shitstorm.
Yeah, that place where like College and Walnut come back together on the south side, just half block up from that, where that antique shop is and the used car salesman. They completely took out that used car salesman's parking lot because the ground underneath it had hollowed out.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And they were afraid that a car was going to fall into it. And that was the thing, is like, you escalate the population, but you don't do anything to the infrastructure, it's going to make the entire town have a problem.
Yeah.
I think 2 years ago, Steinsville on the south side on the way to the lake, that entire section of Monroe County was on a boil out for 3 months. Because after they opened up so many of the new apartment complexes here in Bloomington, it started draining the water supply to them.
Yeah.
On the south side of town, and then it actually collapsed their lines, and they had to do a boil out for like 3 months of summer because they had to take the time to fix it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like, I didn't want to see this place get bogged down in such ways. You know, I was driving Uber one day and I was going down Jordan right in front of the music department, and there was a manhole cover that literally, while I was driving, it blew off the top and sewage was spilling out everywhere. And it was getting on people's cars and an exhaust system, so it was just heating up the smell of poo. And it was right there on the little bridge right there that has the little Jordan's Creek. And it was just flooding everywhere. It was uncanny. It kind of looked like the golem from Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, like the shit golem. It was literally pushing out, like the manhole cover was a butthole, dude. It was just pushing poop out. And like, man, all these kids got out of class and like they were walking by it, and it was raining and splashing everywhere. And I was like, oh my. And so like I went to Bear's place because I used to work there, and I was like, who do I call? Because that's going to be a problem.
Man, this is one of those things that just, it's great that we have a society where everyone's keeping more of their money by paying, like, you know, exceptionally low taxes, and you know, we can barely keep our civil infrastructure intact, and then we've got problems where, you know, the highways are always being fixed. They can't seem to build an interstate that lasts. They're always working on it, like.
Dude, so from Martinsville to Indy, they are closing down I-69 entirely. That we're going to have to go around Martinsville and pretty much go to Owen County on 231 to go north to go to the airport. So when school starts back up again and I start doing Uber, I'll probably get a little bit more money out of the ride because I have to go way out of the way. But you're cutting off IU from Indianapolis. And that's a big thing because the international airport and all the tourism and traffic that we get here because of the school. And you're just cutting off a complete supply line that is needed. They're not shutting down one side of the highway. They're shutting down both sides of the highway for like 3 months, and they're going to just try to get it done all at once. My fear is the same thing's going to happen again as last time when they got 69 to Bloomington. Someone's going to write a bad check, and then someone's not going to pay their employees, and then employees are going to get mad and not show up. And federal government steps in, and then they write a bad check, and then it just sits there. It sits there for 5 years, and no one does anything.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's just to borrow a phrase from the movie Chinatown. It's Indiana, Jake.
Yeah. It is amazing how much this state is actually referenced in shows too, because every time I see it, I was like, God damn it.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos Show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.